Hello, this is Mike Cook, and welcome to episode 22.14 of Anti-Doping Updates. We've got a couple great stories for you today. First, it comes from the MMA world, and the second one comes from rugby. All right, let's get started. So, first story is Zalenski dos Satos. He is a mixed martial arts fighter from Brazil who competes in the UFC promotion. The UFC has its own anti-doping program, which is modeled after the World Anti-Doping Code, but has some differences in the sanctions. USADA, the United States Anti-Doping Agency, administers the UFC anti-doping program. Zalenski dos Satos provided an out-of-competition urine sample on March 14, 2022, which tested positive for Ostarine. Ostarine is an anabolic agent and a selective androgen receptive modulator prohibited at all times under the UFC anti-doping rules. Selective androgen receptor modulators, or SARMS, are a class of therapeutic compounds that have similar anabolic properties to anabolic steroids, but with reduced androgenic properties. That means producing male characteristics. As an example, the androgen receptor is activated by binding androgens such as testosterone. Unlike anabolic steroids, which bind to androgen receptors in many tissues all over the body, individual SARMs selectively bind androgen receptors in certain tissues but not in others. So that's why they're used. According to the UFC policy, if an athlete tests positive for SARM at a urine concentration between 0.1 and 1.0 nanograms per milliliter and is not able to show that the positive test is a result of a contaminated supplement, then the default sanction is 1 year. In this case, Zalenski dos Satos showed that his positive test was the result of a product purchased at a compounding pharmacy in Brazil, but was not able to show that there was contamination. So compounding pharmacies they have those in Brazil where you tell them that you want a supplement with these sorts of ingredients and then they make it for you. So Dos Santos wasn't able to show that there was contamination, and so USADA imposed a 1-year sanction from the date of his positive test. And that's the sanction for testing positive for SARMs for UFC. So now let's turn towards rugby, and rugby operates under the World Anti-Doping Code, and we'll see how the sanction differs there. So this case is regarding Ben Harrison. Ben Harrison is a 35-year-old rugby player from the UK. He enjoyed a distinguished career with 13 years playing for the Warrington Wolves from 2005 to 2018. His team won the 2009, 2010, and 2012 Challenge Cups. He also made international appearances for Ireland at the 2008 Rugby League World Cup and for England in the 2010 Rugby League Four Nations. He retired due to injuries in 2016. During COVID, he decided to come out of retirement on September 10 of 2020 and signed with the Barrow Raiders, which is his hometown team. They needed another player. At the time, Barrow had just been relegated from the Premier League to the Second Division Championship League and was hoping an experienced player like Harrison could help them get promoted back to the Premier League. So they signed him and he started playing with them. On April 28, 2021, Harrison was selected for out-of-competition testing by UKAD, the United Kingdom Anti-Doping. His sample tested positive for drostanolone, which is an anabolic steroid prohibited at all times. UKAD notified Harrison of the possible anti-doping rule violation, and Harrison replied that he had admitted using drostanolone, but he asserted that he only used it when he was retired from rugby and not since his return. So UKAD appointed a disciplinary tribunal to make the decision on this matter. UKAD delegated the authority to Sports Resolutions in London to appoint a panel and make a decision. UKAD presented expert advice from David Cowan, a professor specializing in pharmaceutical toxicology. In his opinion, the results of the sample were indicative of use of drostanolone after Harrison came out of retirement in September 2020, rather than use while retired, as Harrison was claiming. So based on that expert evidence, the panel concluded that UCAD had proven the anti-doping rule violation of presence of drostanolone. The standard sanction is 4 years unless the athlete can show that he was not acting intentionally, and can be further reduced if the athlete shows that there was no fault or negligence or no significant fault or negligence. Harrison, again, he made no submissions to the panel other than his claim that he used drostanolone when retired. And so there's no basis for the panel to find that he did not act intentionally, no basis for the panel to conclude that there is no fault or negligence or no significant fault or negligence. And so the 4-year sanction applied. So my take on this is a good example of the difference between the World Anti-Doping Code and other sports that are not operating under the World Anti-Doping Code. The UFC fighter got a 1-year. The UFC fighter Zalenski dos Satos got a 1-year sanction for using SARMS, and Harrison, the rugby player, got a 4-year sanction for using anabolic steroids. They're both prohibited substances, but UFC has a much lighter sanction, allowing athletes to return to competition much sooner than other athletes that are operating under the World Anti-Doping Code. Let me know in the comments what your take is on the difference between the two sanction things and which you think is more fair. I think that, in my opinion, the stronger sanction is more preferable to me. That's all I have for this time. I'll catch you next time in the next episode.